Section 1 started in the middle of the front and ended at the top of the shoulder here of the front. And for section 2, we're going to repeat the same thing, but on the back of the sweater. So we're going to turn this around here, and we're going to make this part here in this lovely little teal. So for this one here, we're starting at the center back. We're casting on here along the center back, and then we're working the right center back part here to the top of the shoulder. And for this one here, we're going to have a straight edge at the beginning of the right side row. And towards the end of this section, we're going to add a little shaping here at the end of the right side row to shape the neckline along the back and the shoulder here a little bit. And all our traveling stitches are now going to point to the neckline as well, which means we're going to make 1 by 1 left purl crosses. So the pattern shows or points towards the left, towards the shoulder here as well. So this is going to be a mirror image of the section 1 that we worked here in front. And that's what we're working here now in section 2, the right back. My section 1 is still on the cable part of my circular needles, and I'm using the needle tip that is towards the end of the right side row of our section 1. So if the number of stitches cast on for this right back depends on the length of the sweater, and because the neckline is a little higher in back than it is in front, for each of those 3 neckline options, your cast on will be you're going to cast on more stitches for the back than you had in the front. For the long tail cast on, I hold my yarn. I'm kind of securing it with my pinky, and I bring it over the back of my hand, my index finger and the thumb, and then I secure it back here to hold my tension. And with my right hand needle, that is towards the end of the right side row of section 1, I'm going to cast on those stitches by lifting this thread here up with my needle and securing this little first stitch here, and then I twist and pick up a stitch like this. You'll find the right number of stitches to cast on in your pattern. This first row on the wrong side is the setup row where we established the pattern. And so we're going to start here again with a purl 1 selvage stitch, and then you follow the pattern to see how many stitches you need to knit and when and how to slip them, because I'm making a tiny little sample and it's not going to line up with the full-sized pattern. But I'm showing you how to slip those stitches. So you bring the yarn to the front and you slip the stitch purlwise, and then you continue knitting. So again, how many knit stitches between the slipped stitches is all in the pattern. And what we're doing should mirror what we have done on the front of the sweater. So I'm ending my setup row on the wrong side with a slipped stitch, and then I purl the last stitch of the row. When I turn around, I have the first full pattern row where we work 1 by 1 left purl crosses for all our slipped stitches. I'm starting this first right side row again with a knit 1 edge stitch, And then there's already our first 1x1 left purl cross stitch here. So the difference to the right purl cross that we had in section 1 is that we want to change the order of those 2 stitches, and we want to bring this knit stitch further towards the left because it's going to be a left purl cross, and we want to bring this purl stitch here further towards the right. So this means that we have to work this stitch first, the purl stitch first, and the knit stitch second. And for that I bring my yarn to the front, and I'm going to skip this knit stitch and go around the back and insert my needle through this purl stitch as if to purl. But I'm not going to purl it right now, I'm just going to insert it. And then I'm holding on with my right thumb while I slide both of those stitches off my left hand needle. So the stitch that I had the needle inserted through is on my right hand needle now, and the other one is just dangling here in the air, so I'm going to bring that back to my left hand needle. Make sure I don't twist it. And then I bring also the stitch that is on my right hand needle back as well. But I'm going to still leave it on both needles because then I can already purl this stitch here. And the one that we originally skipped, I'm going to knit this one here. So those 2 have changed places, traded places, and the knit stitch has moved further towards the left for my 1x1 left purl cross. You purl this time up to this knit stitch and cross those 2 over each other, and by first working the purl stitch and then working the knit stitch. So bring the yarn to the front, insert through the second stitch as if to purl. You just skip the first stitch, you go behind the first stitch and insert through the second stitch as if to purl. Hold on to the skipped stitch while you slip them off the left hand needle, and without twisting the stitch bring it back to the left hand needle as well. Then insert the left hand needle through the stitch that was slipped and purl that one, and then knit the skipped stitch. That's the 1x1 left purl cross. And I work this way with purl stitches and 1x1 left purl crosses across the entire row. Let's see those in English style knitting as well. So I have this, what's going to be the knit stitch and the purl stitch, and I want those to trade places. Because the next stitch that I'm going to work is a purl stitch, I bring the yarn to the front, and then I skip the first stitch on my left hand needle and insert, I go behind with my right hand needle, I go behind this first stitch and insert through the second stitch as if to purl. With my thumb of my right hand I hold on to the skipped stitch while I slide them both off the left hand needle, and then I, without twisting the stitch, so make sure this is not twisted, bring it back to the left hand needle, insert the left hand needle through the slipped stitch as well and pull, and then knit the traveling stitch here. So that's the 1x1 left purl cross. Bring the yarn is still in front because I'm next I'm going to purl. I skip the first stitch, go behind it and insert the needle as if to purl through the second one. Hold on to it while I slide it off, bring it back to the left hand needle and purl the slipped stitch and knit the skipped stitch. And I work this way until I reach my last stitch of my right side row, and I'm going to knit that last stitch here again. And if you look closely, you'll see that those knit stitches now point out to the left, or slant out to the left. I'm going to work a few more repeats of this, the right sides with the 1x1 left crosses, and the wrong sides with the knit stitches and the slipped stitches, until I'm ready to start increasing for the neckline shaping on the back. When it's time to start the neckline shaping on the right back, I work across my right side row, because those increases for the neckline shaping now happen at the end of the right side rows. So just work as established in pattern until you reach the last 2 stitches. For the make one right purl increase, we lift this strand of yarn, this length of yarn here is from the row below, onto our left hand needle. We lift the strand up with our left hand needle from front to back and purl this stitch through the back loop. So I'm going to tilt my left hand so it's easier to pick up or insert the needle here through the back loop. So I can purl this back loop, and then I can just purl this like this. And then I purl the next stitch and knit the last stitch. If you're an English style knitter, the increase here at the end of the right side row looks like this. You bring the yarn to the front, and then you pick up this this thread from the row below, with your left hand needle from front to back, and then you insert your right hand needle through the back loop purl wise. So you want to tilt your left hand a bit so it's easier to reach that, and then you purl through the back loop of this picked up thread. And that's what it looks like in English style knitting. And then you can continue with the purl one and knit one edge stitch. Section 2 is finished when you have worked the same number of rows as you had in section 1. So you want those 2 pieces to be the same length, but you're still going to have more stitches for the back piece than you had for the front. When you look at those 2 together, you should see that the neckline sides of the back and the front meet here in the middle of your needles. So this is where we work the increases for the front piece, and this is where we work those increases on section 2 just now. And obviously you also want to have both the right sides on the same side and the wrong sides on the same side as well. Don't break your yarn. We're going to continue right here in section 3.